Thank you for having me today. Jacqueline Bouchard. I am the Global Head of ESG Disclosure at S&P Global, and today I'm going to talk to you about ESG. So what is it and why does it matter? ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors, are critical to understanding the sustainability of a company. And so by assessing the underlying issues of these three broad categories, a company can get a better understanding of the risks, the holistic risks that can affect their bottom line. And so the three categories, as I mentioned, are environmental, social, governance, and so it's relating to the natural environment, it's relating to the well-being and rights of people and communities, as well as the management and oversight of companies. And so here's an example of what a financial services ESG profile would look like. So these are the broad categories that would be material to the business that they should consider. And here, materiality is key. So for a company like S&P Global, we create data analytics and benchmarks. We don't create a physical product, so it wouldn't necessarily make sense for us to be focusing on biodiversity issues. So you want to make sure it's material. That way you can actually have an impact and it's authentic and means something. And so underneath each of these categories is usually metrics and KPIs that companies track and assess each year to understand their performance in terms of sustainability. And there are a bunch of frameworks out there that companies use to find what is material to them. There's the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI, which is used by 80% of the S&P 500. There's the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, or SASB. There's also the Financial Stability Board's Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, the FSB-TCFD. We love an acronym. And so you can use all those to find what is material to you so you know what you should be tracking, assessing, and understanding your performance and your long-term value. And so the business context for ESG is evolving rapidly. It used to be a nice to do. It might have got you a few points in the brand reputation department, but now it's truly understood as a way to understand the risks and opportunities that your company can uncover when taking a bit of a broader view outside of your standard enterprise risk management. And so it's a way to uncover value, opportunity, and obviously further assess risk. And so committing to a proactive ESG strategy allows companies to better communicate their sustainability, long-term value to their shareholders and to their stakeholders generally, which is becoming increasingly more and more important, which we'll get to later, or now. So why is ESG management important? So I'm going to touch on four broad areas. We'll keep this one up for a while, but the interest in ESG management is growing incredibly. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that, but generally I think it's because people are understanding that there are risks outside of what you would think of as traditional enterprise risk management. So a good example of this shifting thinking is in the World Economic Forum's most recent Economic Global Risk Report. They have 4 of the 5 top risks to the economy as ESG related. That is up from 0 10 years ago. So that's obviously a really big shift in a pretty short amount of time. And all four of them are related to climate change. So typically, maybe not all companies, but typically enterprise risk management or just risk understanding in general is not thinking about climate change risks. So now applying this layer, you can look a little bit more holistically and understand that these are risks and you need to take them into account. And so if the World Economic Forum thinks these are risks and companies are understanding that they're risks, it shouldn't be a surprise that investors also think that they are a risk. And so that is why investor interest is increasing very steadily, if not tenfold. A most recent report from Morgan Stanley came out 2 weeks ago, said that $22 trillion is invested sustainably or with ESG in mind, and that's only going to continue to grow. And so this used to be a niche investment community. So you think like people eating granola, they're probably living a no waste lifestyle. They definitely don't use plastic straws, and they can probably create a fire from scratch in the middle of the forest. But it's no longer that. It's pretty mainstream, it's growing, and it's becoming, like I said, mainstream. So companies need to start thinking about their own strategy in order to match the demand from investors. We're also about to see the largest transfer of wealth in the next couple of years from baby boomers to millennials. And so I know everyone loves to put millennials in a fishbowl and assess everything they do and opine on it. it may come as a shock to you, I am also a millennial. So I am inherently lazy, and I only showed up today to get a trophy. So I'll be looking for that. But really, because of this fishbowl research, we understand that millennials invest in their values and they value sustainability. And so with that, also all of the bulge bracket banks, if not all, bulge bracket banks have investment stewardship teams now, which is essentially an in-house team that helps to integrate ESG throughout their investment strategy. I'm not saying it's going to be, BlackRock's turning into all ESG, but there is a team there to help integrate or just to help understand how they can apply it. And also with that, they have guidelines and policies in terms of what they, as an investment bank, consider to be the top ESG risks in terms of what they find important in their investments. Also, the UNPRI, the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment, they have about 1,500 members who are all investment institutions with about 62 trillion in assets under management. And those members are all the big names that you would know. And by becoming a member, you're basically committing to applying their 6 principles of sustainable finance to their investment strategies. And so in order for a company to make the cut and be thought of as sustainable, they need to effectively communicate what they're doing, or even before that, they have to have an ESG strategy, which is what I do at S&P Global, which we will get into later. It's not the next slide. But they need to communicate it effectively, and investors are asking these questions now more than ever. And so I always like to imagine our head of investor relations face when he was in a meeting recently, or in the past couple of years or so, and the questions went from what's your diluted EPS and what is your operating net profit or operating profit margin, to what % of your energy comes from renewable sources, what's your diversity breakdown, have you done a modern slavery assessment, and what's your carbon intensity? So he's probably like, what? So thankfully there is an ESG team in-house. Thankfully most people are considering this, but it's an indicator that this is evolving and changing. And so on top of that, there's also regulations and policies coming down the line. So actually, in 2015, France was the first country to mandate ESG disclosure for asset owners and asset managers. The UK just implemented it this past April, that all companies with more than 250 employees disclose their gender pay gap. The European Union also mandates ESG disclosure for some companies in terms of their performance. And even here in the US, even though climate change isn't real here, we, as part of our Dodd-Frank Act, if you think about it, there are some ESG components in there. So if you are a company in the mining industry, you have to disclose in your conflict minerals. Now every company has to disclose, starting this year, the ratio between pay between your CEO and your median employee. So that's like a social issue. And so it's definitely, these regulations are going to keep happening as the world, not the US, continues to understand that they are important and lead to sustainability generally. The World Economic Forum, they understand these are risks. We all understand these are risks. So we need to start understanding, mitigating, and working towards good performance against them. And so it's not just regulators, investors, it's also customers, consumers, employees. They're all looking now to see if a company has sustainability in mind before they make a decision. And so we are at a critical tipping point where companies need to integrate or think about their ESG strategy in order to remain competitive. And so with that, what is a company like S&P, or what are companies doing? So Deloitte released research that said there are 5 indicators a company can look at to try and understand where they are on their path to ESG or sustainability leadership. So you can ask yourself, is ESG integrated into ERM, enterprise risk management? Is ESG integrated into your business strategy holistically? Do you have defined governance? Do you have channels to make sure that the board and executive committee is understanding these issues and what you're doing about them and your performance against them? And then most importantly, are you measuring it and telling the story in a way that makes it easily understandable for those who are looking to find out about your sustainability performance? And so companies need to have these buttoned up, and they need to understand the importance as a business growing in a time of heightened scrutiny and expectation from shareholders, policymakers, and different stakeholders. So that was clear, but it's not clear how I got here. So a little about me and my career to show you that what you do now doesn't mean what you have to, doesn't determine what you do later. So I went to school in Maryland for biology. I wanted to be an orthodontist, and a little too late in the 4-year career there, I realized teeth weren't my thing. And so I went back to New York, where I'm from, and I got a master's degree in energy management. Thought it was really interesting, but it was very environmental focused, and I was learning through that program that sustainability is not just environment. Sustainability is social. It's how you treat your people, your communities, how your governance structures are. It's how not only your impact, but how they can impact you, just a more broader take on it. So from there, I went and got a master's in sustainability management, which is the broader view, from Columbia. And so that's what I do at S&P. I really like it, and I'm not just saying that because ironically, my student loans are also sustainable and long-term. And so in my role, the challenge is clearly defining the link between sustainability and financial performance, because everyone thinks it's fluffy, they think it's cute, but it's not cute. It's real risks, and it's bigger than what they think. So basically, it's translating these ESG megatrends into accountable risks and opportunities. So these are often tangible, so you can decrease costs by increasing operational efficiency. But they're also often intangible, like brand reputation and trust, but those still have value. Also, many times they are long-term in nature, and they're outside of the direct control of the company, which makes people's mind explode, and they just have a hard time understanding the risk in current day. And so from there, also defining and communicating the link between sustainability and financial performance to not only get buy-in internally, the importance of it, but to also engage stakeholders externally. And so with that, I'll describe a little bit about how we do that at S&P Global. And so it's through a fully integrated approach. So basically, I am in everyone's business. And it's approaching them, understanding what they do, and then having them see their world through a sustainability lens and understanding that there's a different viewpoint to take on it. There are risks and there are opportunities from this. So a couple examples here. I work closely with investor relations. So when our investor relations has meetings with our top investors, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, about ESG, I'm in the room. I put together communications for it to make sure that they're getting what they want, the metrics, the data they want. They want the hard stuff. They don't want to read our 100-page corporate responsibility report. So just working through that strategy there. We also work closely with risk and audit. So we are part of the enterprise risk management process for understanding their risks each year. So that way it's not ESG risks over here, ERM risks over here. We speak the same language. We understand that they overlap and that their ESG risks are ERM risks. So that's pretty forward thinking, if I could say so myself. Policies internal, like human rights and environmental health and safety, but also externally, making sure that if there is a policy coming down the line, that we either have a seat at the table to be part of the conversation, or just lending expertise when needed. Global real estate services, measuring and assessing our environmental performance each year, understanding our impact and looking to decrease it annually. I can keep going around and around on this, but I will just say that it's a truly collaborative process. People need to understand why you're there, why you always show up at those meetings, and why you're in their business. And so it needs to be built in, not bolted on. And to do that, it has to come from the top and it has to be authentic. It can't be, something like saving the whales or something like that when it has nothing to do with your company and actually has nothing to do with risks that could actually impact your bottom line. And so I will give you 2 key takeaways. One is that companies need to start thinking long-term to remain competitive. And so the way they do that is an integrated ESG strategy, holistic view of the risks and opportunities that can be derived from understanding and managing your ESG. And then second, most importantly, is clearly communicating it. So if you are not communicating it properly, it's like yelling into your pillow. It's like, I see you over there, you're doing something, but I don't really know what you're saying, so it does nothing. So you need to make sure that you're letting people know that you are a sustainable company, and that you're here for the long run.